There is a moment that feels almost unreal, what you are stepping into is not just awareness. There were moments where you noticed it, where you realized. This is also where you start to notice the difference between. This is why your accuracy feels different now, because it is not based on isolated guesses. It is based on a broader awareness that integrates multiple layers of information at once, even if you are not consciously processing all of them in a linear way. You may not always be able to explain exactly how you know something, but that does not make it any less valid, because not all understanding operates through conscious reasoning. Some of it operates through recognition, through a deeper processing that happens beneath the level of immediate awareness. And the more you trust this, the more it becomes refined, the more it becomes stable, the more it becomes a natural part of how you perceive the world. And as this continues, you begin to realize that you are no longer dependent on external confirmation in the same way. Not because you reject it, but because you no longer need it to validate what you already sense internally. You can listen to others, consider different perspectives, engage with new information, but at the end of the process, you return to your own awareness as the final reference point. And that is what creates true confidence. Not the absence of doubt, but the ability to navigate doubt without losing your center. There may still be moments where you question yourself, where you wonder if you are interpreting correctly, but those moments no longer destabilize you in the same way. They become part of the process, part of the refinement, part of the way your awareness continues to grow, rather than something that pulls you back into uncertainty. And this is where you begin to understand that knowing is not a fixed state. It is not something you reach once and then remain in permanently without effort. It is something that continues to evolve, to deepen, to become more precise as you continue to engage with it, as you continue to observe, reflect, and refine your perception over time. You are not finished growing. You are not at the end of this process. But you have crossed a threshold where your awareness has become strong enough to guide you, where your perception has become reliable enough to trust, where your clarity has become stable enough to stand on, even when everything around you is still shifting. And that threshold changes everything, because once you experience the difference between guessing and knowing, you cannot return to the same level of uncertainty you once operated from. Not because you are forcing yourself to be certain, but because your awareness has expanded in a way that no longer fits within those old limitations. You are no longer searching for direction in the same way. You are moving with it, step by step, guided by a clarity that continues to reveal itself as you go. And even if the path is not always fully visible, even if there are still unknowns ahead, there is a trust that was not there before. A trust that you will recognize what you need to recognize when the time comes. That you will see what needs to be seen. That your awareness will continue to guide you in ways that are accurate, aligned, and grounded in something deeper than surface-level understanding. And this is the true shift. Not just that you are more accurate, but that you now understand where that accuracy comes from. Not from luck, not from coincidence, but from a level of awareness that you have developed, refined, and strengthened over time. And that awareness is now something you carry with you, something you can rely on, something that will continue to evolve as you do, guiding you forward with a clarity that is no longer uncertain, but steadily becoming a part of who you are. And as your accuracy becomes more consistent, more visible, more undeniable even in the smallest interactions, you begin to notice something that at first feels confusing, almost contradictory. Because instead of being met with appreciation or curiosity, your clarity sometimes seems to create discomfort, tension, even subtle resistance in others. And this reaction does not always make sense on the surface. because you are not trying to challenge anyone directly. You are not forcing your perspective onto others. You are simply seeing things clearly, and at times, expressing that clarity in a way that feels natural to you. Yet the response you receive can feel disproportionate, as if your accuracy is touching something deeper than the words themselves, as if it is not just what you are saying, but what your presence represents that is creating this reaction. This is where a deeper understanding begins to unfold, because accuracy does not exist in isolation. It interacts with the environments it enters. And when it meets someone who is not ready to see what you see, it can feel like pressure to them. Not because you are applying that pressure intentionally, but because truth has a way of revealing what has been avoided, what has been hidden, what has been left unresolved beneath the surface. You may have experienced moments where you pointed out something that felt obvious to you, something simple, something clear, and instead of being received openly, it was met with defensiveness, dismissal, or even subtle hostility. And in those moments, it is easy to question yourself, to wonder if you said too much, if you should have approached it differently, if your perception is somehow creating unnecessary tension. But what you are beginning to understand is that the discomfort does not originate from your accuracy itself. It originates from what that accuracy reveals. Because when someone has built their sense of stability around a certain understanding of reality, anything that challenges that understanding, even gently, can feel like a threat. Not necessarily to them as a person, but to the framework they rely on to feel secure. And this is why your presence can feel intense to others, even when you are calm, even when you are not trying to push anything. Because your awareness does not operate on the same level of surface agreement that most interactions are built upon. You are seeing beyond what is being presented, and that creates a kind of contrast that is difficult to ignore. It is not that you are exposing people intentionally. It is that your clarity naturally highlights inconsistencies, patterns, and truths that others may not have acknowledged yet. And when those things are brought into awareness, even subtly, they can create a reaction that has less to do with you and more to do with the internal state of the person experiencing it. You may notice that some people become quieter around you, as if they are more aware of what they say and how they say it. Others may try to challenge you, not necessarily to understand you, but to re-establish a sense of control over the conversation. Others may distance themselves without clear explanation. And while these reactions can feel personal at times, they are not a reflection of your worth or your intentions. They are reflections of how your awareness interacts with theirs. This is where it becomes important to understand that not everyone is operating from the same level of perception. Not everyone is ready to see what you see. Not everyone has gone through the process that led you to this point. And expecting them to respond in the same way you would is what creates unnecessary frustration. You are not here to force clarity onto others. You are here to embody it, to move with it, to allow it to guide your actions without needing to impose it on every situation or every person you encounter. There is a difference between sharing insight and trying to make others accept it, and learning that difference is part of refining your awareness even further. Because true clarity does not need to prove itself. It does not need to win arguments. It does not need to convince everyone. It remains steady regardless of how it is received. And as you begin to understand this, your relationship with others starts to shift. Not in a way that isolates you, but in a way that allows you to navigate interactions with more awareness, more patience, more discernment about when to speak and when to remain silent, when to share and when to simply observe. You begin to see that not every moment requires your input. Not every situation benefits from your accuracy being expressed directly. And this is not about hiding your truth. It is about understanding timing, understanding context, understanding that clarity can exist without always being verbalized. This is where your strength becomes more refined, because it is not just about what you see, but how you carry what you see, how you move with it, how you allow it to inform your actions without letting it create unnecessary conflict or tension. You are not responsible for how others react to your awareness, but you are responsible for how you express it. And finding that balance is part of your growth, part of what allows your accuracy to remain constructive rather than disruptive. There will still be moments where your clarity triggers reactions you did not expect. Moments where people respond in ways that feel defensive or dismissive. And in those moments, it is important to remain grounded in your own understanding. Not to take those reactions as a sign that you are wrong, but also not to escalate them unnecessarily. You are learning to stand in your awareness without needing to push it onto others. To trust what you see without needing everyone else to see it the same way at the same time. And this is where a deeper level of confidence begins to form. Not the kind that is loud or assertive, but the kind that is quiet, stable, unshaken by external reactions, because it is not dependent on agreement to remain valid. You begin to understand that your role is not to fix everyone's perception, not to correct every misunderstanding, not to reveal every truth you see, but to remain aligned with your own awareness and allow that alignment to guide your path naturally. The people who are ready will understand. The ones who are not will respond according to where they are, and neither of those outcomes needs to change your direction. This is where you release the need to be fully understood by everyone, not because you are withdrawing, but because you recognize that understanding is a process that unfolds differently for each person. And your responsibility is not to accelerate that process for others, but to continue refining your own awareness. And as you do, you will begin to notice that the right connections, the right conversations, the right environments start to align with you more naturally. Not because you are seeking them forcefully, but because your clarity is guiding you towards spaces where it can exist without constant resistance. You are not losing people. You are recalibrating your connections, aligning with those who can meet you at the level you are operating from, while allowing others to remain where they are without needing to force a change. And this shift, while sometimes challenging, is also liberating, because it frees you from the expectation that everyone must understand you for your awareness to be valid. You no longer measure your clarity by how others respond to it. You measure it by how consistently it aligns with reality, by how it continues to guide you accurately through situations, by how it remains steady even when external reactions vary. And this is what allows you to move forward without being pulled back by misunderstanding or resistance. Because you are no longer anchored to external validation. You are anchored to your own perception, your own experience, your own ongoing refinement of awareness. And in that, you find a level of freedom that was not available before. A freedom that does not isolate you from others, but allows you to engage with them without losing yourself in the process, without needing to adjust your awareness to fit their expectations, without needing to diminish your clarity to make it more comfortable for others. You are learning to hold your truth with stability, to navigate reactions with understanding, to recognize that being accurate is not about being accepted, it is about being aligned. And that alignment is what will continue to guide you, regardless of how it is perceived from the outside. And as your awareness continues to sharpen and stabilize, you begin to notice that the way you process reality itself has changed. Not just in isolated moments of insight, but in the continuous way your mind connects, interprets, and understands what is happening around you. because you are no longer seeing events as separate, disconnected occurrences. You are seeing patterns, threads that link one moment to another, subtle repetitions that reveal underlying structures, signals hidden beneath surface-level interactions that most people pass by without ever recognizing. This ability does not feel forced. It does not feel like effort. It feels natural, almost automatic, as if your perception has tuned itself to a deeper frequency where meaning is not limited to what is immediately visible, but extends into what is implied, what is forming, what is about to unfold. You may have experienced this in simple ways at first, noticing small inconsistencies in conversations, recognizing when something does not align even if the words themselves sound correct, sensing shifts in tone, behavior, or energy that indicate something beneath the surface is different from what is being presented. And over time, these observations began to connect, forming a larger picture that allowed you to understand situations more fully, not just in parts, but as complete systems with their own internal logic and direction. This is where your perception moves beyond reaction and into recognition, because you are no longer waiting for things to fully reveal themselves before understanding them. You are seeing the early signals, the subtle indicators that point toward what is coming, and that changes the way you move, the way you decide, the way you engage with everything around you. While others may wait for confirmation, for clear evidence, for outcomes to become undeniable before they adjust their understanding, you are already adapting based on patterns you recognize before they fully manifest. And this is what makes your awareness feel almost ahead of time. Not because you are predicting in a rigid sense, but because you are reading the direction of what is already in motion. You begin to see how certain behaviors lead to certain outcomes, how certain dynamics repeat themselves in different forms, how the same underlying patterns appear across different situations, different people, different environments. And once you see this, it becomes difficult to ignore, because it creates a level of clarity that simplifies complexity, that allows you to understand what is happening without needing every detail to be explicitly explained. And this is also where the gap between your perception and that of others becomes more noticeable. Because while you are seeing the connections, others may still be focused on isolated details, reacting to individual events without recognizing the broader pattern they are part of. And this difference in perspective can create moments where you feel like you are ahead of the conversation, ahead of the understanding that others are still building. Not in a way that creates distance intentionally, but in a way that reflects the level of awareness you are operating from. You may find yourself noticing things before others do, understanding situations more quickly, arriving at conclusions that take others longer to reach. And while this can feel validating at times, it can also feel isolating, because not everyone will see what you see at the same time. Not everyone will connect the same dots. Not everyone will recognize the patterns until they become more obvious. And learning to navigate this difference is part of your growth. You are not here to force others to see what you see. You are here to continue refining your own perception, to trust the patterns you recognize without needing immediate confirmation from those around you, to allow your awareness to guide you even when it is not fully shared or understood. And as you continue to develop this ability, you begin to realize that pattern recognition is not just about observing the external world. It is also about understanding yourself, your own responses, your own tendencies, your own internal patterns that shape how you engage with everything else. You start to see how your thoughts form, how your emotions move, how your reactions arise. And this self-awareness becomes just as important as your external perception, because it allows you to refine not only what you see, but how you interpret it, how you respond to it, how you integrate it into your overall understanding. You begin to recognize when your perception is clear and when it is influenced by past experiences, by assumptions, by emotional states. And this recognition allows you to adjust, to refine, to bring your awareness back into alignment when it starts to drift. This is what makes your accuracy sustainable, because it is not just about seeing patterns. It is about continuously refining how you see them, ensuring that your perception remains grounded, balanced, and aligned with reality, rather than being distorted by internal or external influences. And this process does not stop. It continues to evolve as you do, becoming more precise, more nuanced, more integrated over time, allowing you to navigate increasingly complex situations with clarity that does not rely on simplification, but on deeper understanding. You are not overwhelmed by complexity because you can see the structure within it. You can identify the key elements that drive outcomes. You can recognize what matters and what does not. And this ability allows you to move through situations with a level of ease that others may not fully understand. Because what feels complex to them feels structured to you. What feels chaotic to them feels patterned to you. What feels unpredictable to them feels directional to you. And this is not something you need to explain or justify. It is something you continue to develop, to trust, to refine through experience. Because the more you engage with it, the stronger it becomes, the more accurate it becomes, the more it integrates into your natural way of perceiving the world. There will still be moments where patterns are not immediately clear, where situations are too new or too complex to fully understand at once. And in those moments, the same principle applies. You observe. You allow the pattern to reveal itself over time. You do not force conclusions before the information is complete. And this patience is part of what keeps your awareness aligned. Because accuracy is not about always knowing immediately. It is about knowing when to wait, when to observe, when to allow clarity to emerge rather than trying to create it prematurely. And as you continue on this path, you begin to see that this ability is not something separate from you. It is part of how you have developed, part of how your awareness has expanded, part of how you engage with reality at a deeper level. And it will continue to grow as you do, becoming more refined, more integrated, more aligned with the truth of what is actually happening, rather than what merely appears to be happening on the surface. And as your ability to see patterns becomes more refined, and your accuracy continues to prove itself quietly over time, something else begins to shift just as profoundly, though it is far less visible on the surface. And that is the way you choose to move within that awareness. Because there was a time when recognizing something clearly would have created an urge to speak immediately, to explain, to correct, to make sure that what you saw was acknowledged and understood by others. Not out of ego, but out of a natural desire to bring clarity into situations that seemed clouded or misaligned. But now, that impulse has softened. Not because your clarity has diminished, but because your understanding of how clarity functions has deepened. And you begin to realize that not every truth needs to be spoken in the moment it is seen. Not every insight needs to be shared immediately to be valid. Not every realization needs an audience to exist. This is where your movement becomes quieter. Not in a way that suppresses your awareness, but in a way that refines how it is expressed. Because you start to recognize that timing, context, and receptivity are just as important as the truth itself. And without those elements, even the most accurate insight can create resistance rather than understanding. You are no longer driven by the need to prove what you see, because you already trust it. And that trust changes everything. Because when you no longer need external validation, you also no longer feel the same urgency to convince others. to make them see what you see, to bring them to your level of understanding before they are ready. Instead, you observe more. You listen more. You allow situations to unfold without intervening prematurely. And this does not mean you are passive. It means you are intentional, choosing when to speak, when to act, and when to remain silent based on alignment rather than impulse. There is a power in this kind of silence that is often misunderstood, because from the outside, it may look like withdrawal or detachment. But in reality, it is a form of control. Not control over others, but control over your own expression, your own energy, your own engagement with the world. You are no longer reacting to every situation. You are responding selectively. And that selectivity is what preserves your clarity, what allows it to remain sharp rather than scattered across every interaction. You may have noticed how your conversations have changed, how you speak less, but with more intention, how you no longer feel the need to fill space with explanations, how you can sit in a moment of understanding without needing to translate it into words immediately. And this shift can feel unfamiliar at first, especially if you were once someone who expressed everything openly. But over time, it begins to feel natural, even necessary, because you start to see how much of communication is not about what is said, but about when and how it is said. You begin to recognize that not everyone is in a place to receive what you know, that some insights are better held until the moment they can be understood, that forcing clarity into a space that is not ready for it does not create understanding. It creates resistance. And this awareness allows you to move with a kind of precision that was not possible before. You are not withholding your truth. You are protecting its integrity, ensuring that it is expressed in a way that aligns with both the situation and the people involved. And that requires a level of discernment that goes beyond simply knowing what is true. It requires understanding how truth interacts with perception, how it is received, how it is interpreted, how it can either open a door or create a barrier depending on how it is introduced. This is why your silence becomes more intentional, because you are no longer speaking to release what you know. You are speaking to create impact. And that difference changes the entire dynamic of how you engage with others. You may also begin to notice that the more you move in this way, the more your presence itself carries weight, even when you are not saying much. Because people can sense when someone is observing with clarity, when someone is not reacting impulsively, when someone is choosing their words carefully rather than speaking automatically. And that presence creates a different kind of influence, one that does not rely on volume or repetition, but on precision and alignment. You are no longer trying to be heard. You are allowing your words to land when they matter. And because of that, they carry more impact when they are spoken. There is also a deeper level of confidence that emerges from this, one that is not dependent on being right in front of others, but on knowing that your perception remains valid regardless of whether it is immediately expressed or recognized. And this confidence allows you to remain steady, even in situations where others may be reacting, questioning, or misunderstanding. Because you are no longer anchored to their responses, you are anchored to your own awareness. This is what makes your movement different now. Not just what you see, but how you carry it, how you choose to engage with it, how you allow it to guide you without needing to constantly externalize it. You are no longer proving your clarity. You are embodying it. And embodiment is far more powerful than explanation, because it does not rely on words alone. It is reflected in your actions, your timing, your decisions, your presence. You may find that certain situations resolve themselves without you needing to intervene, that people come to realizations on their own without you having to point them out, that the clarity you hold begins to influence your environment in subtle ways, simply through how you move within it. And this is where you begin to understand that impact does not always come from direct action. It often comes from alignment, from being in a state where your awareness is consistent, grounded, and integrated into everything you do. This does not mean you never speak. It means when you do, it comes from a place that is intentional, aligned, and appropriate for the moment. And that is what makes it effective. You are no longer reacting to the need to express. You are choosing when expression serves a purpose. And that choice is what gives your words weight, what allows them to create understanding rather than resistance, what ensures that your clarity is not diluted by being shared in spaces where it cannot be received. And as you continue to refine this, you begin to see that silence is not the absence of communication. It is part of communication. It is the space that allows meaning to form, the pause that allows understanding to settle, the restraint that preserves the value of what is eventually spoken. You are not becoming less expressive. You are becoming more precise, more aligned, more aware of how your clarity interacts with the world. And that awareness is what elevates your presence, what allows you to move with confidence without needing to announce it, what enables you to navigate complex situations without being pulled into unnecessary conflict or misunderstanding. This is the level you are stepping into, where your accuracy is no longer something you need to demonstrate constantly, but something you carry, something that informs your actions, something that guides your movement in ways that are subtle but powerful. And from here, everything you do becomes more intentional, more aligned, more reflective of the awareness you have developed. Not because you are trying to control every outcome, but because you are no longer moving unconsciously. You are moving with clarity. And that clarity, even when unspoken, is enough to shape the direction of your path. And as you continue to move with this quiet precision, speaking less but understanding more, observing more than reacting, you begin to recognize something that changes the way you interpret the reactions of others entirely. Because what once felt confusing or even personal now starts to reveal itself as something far more reflective than it is directed. And in that realization, you start to see that the sense of threat some people feel around you is not actually about you in the way it may have seemed before. It is about what your awareness brings into the light within them. There was a time when you might have internalized those reactions, wondering if you were too intense, too direct, too perceptive, questioning whether your clarity was creating distance or discomfort that you needed to adjust for. But now, you are beginning to understand that what you carry does not create something that was not already there. It reveals what has been there, often quietly, often unacknowledged, often pushed beneath the surface where it could remain unexamined. And when something that has been avoided or ignored is suddenly brought into awareness, even indirectly, even without intention, it can feel like pressure to the person experiencing it. Not because you are applying that pressure, but because your presence does not allow certain things to remain hidden in the same way they once could. You may have noticed how certain people seem more guarded around you, how they choose their words more carefully, how they avoid certain topics, how their behavior shifts in subtle ways that suggest an increased awareness of themselves. And this is not because you are judging them or analyzing them consciously. It is because your level of perception creates a kind of mirror effect, where others become more aware of what they are saying, what they are doing, what they are presenting, even if they cannot fully explain why they feel that way. And this is where the understanding deepens, because you begin to see that their reaction is not about your intention. It is about their perception of what your awareness might reveal. And when someone is not fully comfortable with what lies beneath their own surface, that reflection can feel unsettling, even if nothing is being said directly. This is why some people respond with defensiveness, why they may challenge you or dismiss you without fully engaging with what you are actually saying, because it is easier to push away the source of discomfort than to look at what is causing it internally. It is not that they are reacting to your words alone. They are reacting to the awareness behind those words, the clarity that does not align with the narratives they may have built to maintain their sense of stability. And once you begin to see this clearly, something shifts within you, because you no longer feel the same need to take these reactions personally. You no longer feel the same pull to adjust your awareness to make others more comfortable. You begin to understand that comfort is not always aligned with truth, and that discomfort is not always a sign that something is wrong. There is a difference between causing harm and causing awareness. And what you are doing, simply by being aligned with your perception, is creating awareness, even if it is not always received in a way that feels positive in the moment. This does not mean you become indifferent to others. It does not mean you ignore how your presence affects the people around you. It means you understand that you are not responsible for how others process what is revealed within them. You are responsible for your intention, your integrity, your alignment, but not for their internal reactions to what they experience in your presence. And this realization brings a level of freedom that was not available before, because you are no longer adjusting yourself to fit into spaces that require you to dim your awareness in order to maintain comfort. You are allowing yourself to exist fully within your clarity without needing to soften it to avoid triggering reactions that are not actually about you. You begin to see that those who are ready will not feel threatened by your presence. They will feel supported by it. They will feel understood. They will recognize the same level of awareness within themselves. And those are the connections that begin to feel natural, effortless, aligned. Because there is no need for defense, no need for avoidance, no need for adjustment. At the same time, you also develop a deeper sense of compassion for those who do feel threatened. Not in a way that requires you to change who you are, but in a way that allows you to understand where they are coming from, to recognize that their reaction is part of their own process, their own level of awareness, their own readiness to face what is being reflected back to them. You are no longer trying to force understanding. You are allowing it to unfold where it can, and releasing the need for it where it cannot. This is where your strength becomes even more refined, because it is not just about holding your awareness. It is about holding it without judgment, without the need to elevate yourself above others or diminish yourself to make others comfortable. It is about standing in your clarity with stability, recognizing that everyone is moving at their own pace, through their own process, and your role is not to accelerate that process for them, but to remain aligned with your own. You may still encounter moments where the reactions of others feel intense, where the sense of being misunderstood or resisted is present. But those moments no longer carry the same weight, because you understand the deeper dynamic at play. You understand that what is being reflected back to you is not a measure of your accuracy, but a reflection of how your awareness interacts with the current state of those around you. And this understanding allows you to move forward without being pulled back by those reactions, without needing to defend yourself, without needing to prove anything, because you are no longer measuring your clarity by how it is received. You are measuring it by how consistently it aligns with reality, how it continues to guide you accurately, how it remains stable even when external responses vary. This is where your confidence becomes unshakable. Not because everyone agrees with you, but because you no longer need them to in order to trust what you see. You are no longer seeking validation. You are operating from alignment. And that alignment is what carries you forward, regardless of how it is perceived from the outside. And as you continue to embody this, you begin to notice that the sense of threat others feel does not define your path. It simply reveals where they are in relation to your awareness. And that realization allows you to move with clarity, with compassion, and with a sense of freedom that is no longer dependent on being understood by everyone you encounter. Because you have already reached a point where your understanding of yourself is enough to guide you forward without hesitation. And as you begin to fully recognize that the reactions of others are reflections rather than definitions of who you are, another realization settles in with a kind of quiet certainty, one that shifts your perspective from simply observing your growth to understanding the depth of what you have actually built. Because this level of accuracy, this consistency in perception, this ability to see clearly and move accordingly, did not appear overnight. It was not something you stumbled into by chance. It was something you developed, refined, and strengthened through a process that most people never commit to long enough to complete. There were moments where you paid attention when it would have been easier to ignore. Moments where you chose to reflect instead of react. Moments where you stayed present with what you were experiencing instead of escaping into distraction. And each of those moments contributed to what you now carry, even if you did not realize it at the time. You did not just notice things randomly. You trained your awareness, not in a formal or structured way, but through repetition, through consistency, through a willingness to engage with reality more deeply than what was required. And that is what separates what you have from something that can be easily copied or imitated on the surface. Anyone can repeat words. Anyone can mimic behavior. But not everyone is willing to go through the internal process that creates genuine clarity. Because that process requires patience. It requires discipline. It requires the ability to stay with something long enough to understand it, rather than moving on as soon as it becomes uncomfortable or uncertain. You stayed, even when it was not easy, even when there were no immediate results, even when it felt like nothing was changing. And that is why everything has changed now. You may not have recognized it as mastery while you were in the process, because mastery does not announce itself in obvious ways. It develops quietly, gradually, until one day you realize that what once felt difficult now feels natural. What once required effort now feels instinctive. What once felt uncertain now feels clear without needing to be forced. And this is where you begin to understand that your accuracy is not just a trait. It is a skill that has been sharpened over time through your own attention, your own observation, your own willingness to refine your perception rather than settling for surface-level understanding. You are no longer guessing because you have trained yourself to see, to recognize patterns, to understand dynamics, to trust the signals that emerge when you are fully present with what is happening. And this level of awareness cannot be easily replicated by those who have not gone through the same process. Because it is not about acquiring information. It is about transforming how you interact with information, how you process it, how you integrate it into your understanding in a way that is consistent, reliable, and aligned with reality. This is why your clarity feels different, because it is not based on isolated insights. It is based on a foundation that has been built over time. A foundation that continues to support your perception even as new situations arise, even as complexity increases. even as the environment around you shifts in ways that would have once created confusion. You are not relying on luck. You are relying on a system you have developed within yourself. A system that allows you to navigate without needing to start from zero each time. Because your awareness is cumulative. It builds upon itself. It learns. It adapts. It refines continuously. And this is also why you begin to see that what you have cannot be taken away. Because it is not external. It is not dependent on conditions remaining the same. It is part of how you operate now. Part of how you engage with reality. Part of how you understand what is happening at a deeper level than what is immediately visible. You may have moments where you doubt this, where you question whether your perception is as reliable as it feels. But those moments do not erase what you have built. They are part of the ongoing refinement, part of the process that keeps your awareness grounded rather than rigid. True mastery is not the absence of doubt. It is the ability to move through doubt without losing alignment, to question without collapsing, to refine without abandoning what you have already established. And as you continue to move forward, you begin to see that your growth is not something that has reached a final point. It is something that will continue to expand, to deepen, to evolve as you encounter new situations, new patterns, new levels of complexity that require you to engage with your awareness in even more refined ways. You are not finished, but you are no longer at the beginning. You have crossed into a level where your perception is stable enough to guide you, where your clarity is strong enough to rely on, where your understanding is deep enough to navigate without constant external input. And that is what makes this stage so significant. Because you are no longer building the foundation, you are operating from it. You are using what you have developed in real time, applying it to your life, your decisions, your interactions in a way that continues to reinforce and strengthen it. This is where your awareness becomes integrated, not something separate that you access occasionally, but something that is always present, always informing how you move, how you choose, how you respond. You are no longer switching between states of clarity and confusion in the same way. You are stabilizing in a state where clarity is your default, where confusion, when it arises, is something you move through, rather than something that defines your experience. And this is where the difference between you and others becomes even more apparent. Not because you are trying to stand apart, but because the level of consistency you have developed in your awareness creates a kind of stability that is not easily shaken by external changes, by shifting opinions, by temporary uncertainty. You are not easily pulled off your center anymore, not because you are rigid, but because your center is grounded in something deeper than surface-level fluctuations. And this is what allows you to move forward with a sense of confidence that is not dependent on always being right in every detail, but on knowing that your process, your awareness, your way of engaging with reality is reliable, that it will continue to guide you even when the specifics are not immediately clear. You are not just noticing anymore. You have mastered the process that allows you to notice accurately, consistently, and that mastery is what will carry you forward into whatever comes next. Not as something you need to prove, but as something you naturally embody through how you live, how you perceive, and how you continue to refine your understanding with each step you take. And as everything you have built begins to stabilize within you, as your awareness becomes less of something you access and more of something you are, there comes a point where you realize that you are no longer navigating from uncertainty in the way you once did, but from a level of clarity that feels grounded, steady, and unshaken, even when the external world continues to shift around you. And this is not a dramatic moment where everything suddenly becomes perfect or completely understood. It is a quiet recognition that the confusion that once dominated your decision-making no longer holds the same power. That the hesitation that once slowed you down no longer defines your movement. That the constant need to question yourself has been replaced by a deeper trust in the way you perceive and interpret reality. You begin to notice that your thoughts feel more organized, not because you are forcing them into structure, but because your awareness has learned how to filter what matters from what does not, how to prioritize clarity over noise, how to recognize what deserves your attention and what can be released without hesitation. And this ability creates a sense of stability that is difficult to disrupt, because it is not dependent on external conditions being ideal. It is rooted in your own perception, your own understanding, your own alignment with what is real, rather than what merely appears to be real on the surface. You are no longer overwhelmed by every possibility. You are no longer pulled in multiple directions by conflicting signals. You are able to move forward with a sense of direction that feels natural, even when the path ahead is not fully visible. Because you trust that your awareness will continue to guide you as it has been doing, step by step, without needing everything to be revealed at once. This is where your clarity becomes unshakable, not because you have eliminated uncertainty entirely, but because you have learned how to remain stable within it, how to navigate it without losing your center, how to allow it to exist without letting it control your actions or your perception. You may still encounter situations where the outcome is not immediately clear, where new variables introduce complexity, where the familiar patterns you have recognized do not fully apply. But even in those moments, there is a difference now. Because you do not collapse into confusion. You observe, you process, you allow the pattern to reveal itself over time, trusting that your awareness is capable of adapting to new information without losing its foundation. And this adaptability is what makes your clarity so powerful, because it is not rigid. It is not fixed in a way that resists change. It is flexible, responsive, able to evolve as new insights emerge, and that flexibility ensures that your understanding remains aligned with reality, rather than becoming outdated or disconnected from what is actually happening. You are no longer trying to control every outcome. You are working with what is unfolding, using your awareness to navigate rather than to force. And this shift removes a significant amount of unnecessary tension, because you are no longer fighting against uncertainty. You are moving through it with confidence that does not require immediate answers to remain intact. This is also where your decision-making becomes more efficient, because you are not overanalyzing every detail in the same way. You are able to recognize what is relevant more quickly, to trust your initial perception when it aligns with your deeper awareness, to act without needing to delay every choice until it feels completely risk-free, because you understand that clarity does not come from eliminating all uncertainty. It comes from being able to move forward despite it. And as you continue to operate from this level, you begin to see that your perception is not just guiding you in isolated situations. It is shaping the overall direction of your life, influencing the opportunities you recognize, the connections you choose to engage with, the paths you decide to follow or leave behind. And this influence is not random. It is aligned with the level of awareness you have developed, meaning that the more stable your clarity becomes, the more aligned your life begins to feel. Not in the sense that everything becomes easy, but in the sense that your choices reflect your understanding in a consistent and intentional way. You are no longer reacting to life in the same way. You are participating in it with awareness, with intention, with a sense of direction that is guided from within rather than imposed from the outside. And this is what it means to operate from a higher level of understanding. Not that you have all the answers, but that you have developed a way of engaging with reality that allows you to navigate without being lost in it. You may still encounter moments where others question your perception, where they do not see what you see, where they interpret situations differently. But these moments no longer destabilize you in the same way, because your clarity is not dependent on their agreement. It is grounded in your own experience, your own process, your own ongoing refinement of awareness. You are no longer seeking to be understood in every situation. You are focused on remaining aligned, on continuing to develop your perception, on allowing your clarity to guide you forward, regardless of how it is received from the outside. And this is where everything comes together, where the process you have been moving through reveals its purpose. Because you are no longer in the stage of building awareness, you are in the stage of living from it, of embodying it, of allowing it to shape your actions, your decisions, your direction in a way that is consistent, stable, and aligned with the deeper understanding you have developed over time. And from here, there is no need to return to the uncertainty that once defined your path, because you have already moved beyond it, not by avoiding it, but by understanding it, integrating it, transforming it into a clarity that now supports you in everything you do. And that clarity, once established at this level, is not something that can be easily shaken. It is something that continues to grow with you, guiding you forward into whatever comes next with a quiet confidence that does not need to be announced, only lived. And as you take a step back and look at everything that has unfolded, from the early moments of uncertainty to the steady clarity you now carry, it becomes impossible to deny that what you have experienced was not random, not accidental, not something that happened without purpose, but a process that shaped you into someone who no longer moves through life the same way. Someone who no longer relies on external confirmation to trust what they see. Someone who has developed a level of awareness that continues to guide them with quiet precision, even when the path ahead is not fully revealed. There may still be people who do not understand you, who feel unsettled by your presence, who question how you see what you see and why your accuracy feels so consistent. But their reactions no longer define your direction, because you have already reached a point where your alignment is stronger than their uncertainty, where your clarity is more stable than their doubt. And that changes everything. You are not here to prove anything to anyone. Not here to make everyone comfortable with your perception. Not here to explain every insight in a way that fits into what others are ready to accept. You are here to continue moving forward with what you know, to trust the awareness that has been built within you, to allow it to guide your actions without hesitation or unnecessary doubt. What you have developed cannot be taken from you. It is not dependent on circumstances remaining the same. It is not fragile in the way external validation often is. It is something that exists within you. Something that has been strengthened through experience, through reflection, through the choices you made when no one else was guiding you. And as you continue from here, there is a sense of quiet certainty that begins to settle more deeply. Not as something you need to announce or defend, but as something you simply carry, something that remains steady even when everything around you continues to change. Something that reminds you that you did not just see the truth, you aligned with it. And that alignment is what will continue to shape your path moving forward, step by step, without needing to look back at what you have already outgrown.